Hello everyone, welcome back to MixBuzz TV, mixing and mastering tutorials on YouTube. With this video, we're gonna start a series on stem mastering, something that I'm asked to do very often these days. We're gonna see what this technique is, what the common processes are, and what you can achieve comparing the mix, the raw mix, with the final result. So we're gonna listen and see how to take this to this. Okay, so for those who don't know what stem mastering is, differently from conventional mastering where you work on the two-track stereo mix, you have the different element of the song separated. So in this case, for example, we have a drum stem, we have a bass, guitars, lead vocals, background vocals, effects, and a solo guitar. So usually you talk to the client first and decide together how many stems based on the elements present in the mix. This was a classic punk rock mix, so the elements are not so many. There's no electronics, so it's all real recorded instrument. It was pretty easy to set up the stems. I'm not allowed to play you the whole songs with all the elements present, so we're gonna listen just to the instrumental mix, but it will be enough to show you what stem mastering is. It's a very powerful technique to get a mix to the next level. So for this first video, we start with the drum. So we have our drum stem up here, which without any processing on, it sounded like this. Let's solo it, let's solo everything. And the drums by itself sounded like this. Okay, so in stem mastering, the processing that you can do on each element and on the master bus is not as subtle as conventional mastering, otherwise the client wouldn't send you the stems. When you want the mix to sound pretty different from what it was, you will see some pretty extreme settings and some pretty big changes, but this is not always the case. But in this case, we were pretty far from the reference that the client had, so the processing had to be a little heavy-handed, and that's also why I think this is a good example to make a video about stem mastering. So for the drums, the first processing was a little bit of EQ. As you can see, I have a high pass 12 dB at around 32, a cut of about 2 dB at 200, and just limiting the high end with a high cut at 30K. Let's see with and without. Okay. Okay, especially if you listen to the snare and the whole drum in general, you can hear that the high pass filter already cleaned up a little bit of low end of muddiness down there and made the snare brighter already. And especially this cut here, if you take a look at the spectrum analysis, you will see that the snare had quite a lot of energy in this 200 area, a little too much. So cutting that range, it made the snare a little less boomy. You can see here from the spectrum, that's exactly where the snare hits. Okay, this is the frequency cut. without. Okay. Drums already cleaner and a little bit brighter. So let's take a look at the second processing, which is multiband compression. And I used just 2 bands for this. This one just to enhance the presence of the snare only when the snare hits. And this one to keep the low end controlled, but when the kick hits, you will see the level of this band going back to unity to 0. So by default is minus 6 dB, and when the kick hits, it goes back to 0. So I have all the power of the kick drum in the low end only when the kick drum hits. Let's hear with and without. As you can see, it's triggered just by the snare hits, and this one is triggered just by the kick hits. Without. Okay, attack is very fast for this one. Release is musical to my ears, and this one attack is the same and the release is a little faster. So let's take a look at the third processing, which is another EQ, and this one is where the madness begins. This drum had some problems, some phasing issues around this area here, 3, 4, 6K, because of the cymbal, I guess, or the room wasn't right. It had something there going on. Another pretty steep high pass filter at 22, cut of 4 dB around 200, same problem frequency we had before, and a boost of about 1 dB at 3.6K, and this one, which is the crazy one, is minus 7 dB, a notch around the 6.5K. Pretty narrow Q, and this was the frequency problem. And again, limiting the high end at 30K again. Let's hear it with and without. Okay, it cleaned it up a bit, made it brighter. But most important, if I solo you this band, you will hear the problem frequency that I'm talking about, the phasing, whistling sound that this drum stem had. Okay? Let's bypass that band only. Okay, so it cleaned that up a bit. Please keep in mind that some of these processing might not make sense if you listen to the stem alone by itself, like the drum, like we're doing now. But when all the other elements are in, they actually work well together. So let's take a look at the last processing for the drum, which is a simple clipper, just to control the highest peaks. As you can see, less than a dB. Let's hear it without. Okay. It's less than a dB, but it makes the drum already a little more gritty and a little more punchy. Although keep in mind that here we have a level difference, so that is also why it sounds louder, but tone wise is a little more aggressive with this on. And lastly, since that when all the other elements, guitars and bass, were in, I couldn't feel the drum the way I want it, I sent the drum to a parallel bus here, call it X drum, and on this bus I have a compressor, an API 2500. Let's listen just to the parallel drum bus. No processing with the compressor. So settings are pretty fast attack, high ratio, very fast release, new feed forward mode, normal mode for the thrust, and hard knee. As you can hear, is mashing the drum, letting just a little bit of attack passing through. Without. Okay. And after the compressor, the URS saturation plugin. Without. With. Okay. It just keeps the peaks of this parallel bass controlled, saturated, and I wanted the distortion from this one, even though, as you can see here, I'm blending 35% of wet signal with the dry signal. And this bus is added to our main drum bus. Let's hear with and without. With. Okay. Is a little punchier with this on. You can hear the attack of the snare coming up a little more, and the kick drum too. So the transients are actually enhanced by this processing, but the overall level of the drum hitting the two bus is not higher than it would be because this bus is in parallel. So let's hear it without any processing on again. This was the original drum bus. Okay, so big difference here. And for this video, we're gonna stop here, and in the next one, we're gonna take a look at the bass and what we have done on that stem. So I hope this was useful. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you will enjoy the whole series on stem mastering. If you liked the video, please click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and see you next time.